I don't want everybody to start giving high fives here. This is just our first. This was D-Day, right? We have attacked the beaches. We're being shot at. We're taking casualties. We're gonna, we need to climb the cliff still. We got to get to the hedgerows. We got to break out of the hedgerows. So this is one element of a breakout. This indictment of Comey, but that's all it is. We're still at the top of the cliffs now. We're still trying to break out of those hedgerows and move into, victory over Europe. But we cannot declare victory over Europe just yet. So metaphorically speaking, that's kind of where we are. And I said that about a day, I think 24 hours after on X after the historic election by Donald Trump. So big picture, big picture. And we talked about, like you said, we talked prior about false flags. One of the interesting things, and I've been paying very close attention to what the Secret Service just discovered up in New York City, this discovery of this telecommunications equipment that they found. And it's clear to me the types of equipment that they found. This is not some, go down to Walmart and buy this stuff and a couple of smart technoids put it together. This is nation state stuff, because when you look at the capabilities of that particular activity, right? These are things that can shut down 911, or you can get inside and spoof 911. You can do things like take over rail systems. You can take over transit systems, so rail, bus, trucks, and make it look as though it's mobile and low. Like you kind of go, what's going on here? And it's very difficult to detect. It's not just shutting down one set of servers in a building, in a bank, in a financial institution. It's actually taking over an entire system. And that also includes systems inside of the Department of Defense, because again, the capabilities that were discovered are very, very high end, serious technical capabilities, telecommunications systems. And my guess is that we probably have some of those sitting in other parts of the country right now, maybe in some of the other big cities where there are transit systems, metros and such, and certainly buses, taxis, the whole gamut. So I want people to understand that, yeah, there's a post right there about Comey, right? The first domino. And here's the thing about Comey, and I'll just touch on him briefly, because I think that there are other things that we need people to understand.
I want you to have the floor, but I think what you brought up first is the key. I said during the break, I believe this is the false flag. You said absolutely. This is a coup d'etat system, and I said, would it be the British? The Chinese, the Israelis, we know they just found a bunch of Israeli stuff when they came to visit in the Secret Service vehicles that takes over systems as well, very similar. But we know the CIA would use a foreign government as a cutout, or some of those subgroups that are still loyal to the globalist deep state. And you were agreeing with me that exactly this is what you'd see in place ahead of an attempted hot coup to take control and disrupt telecommunications. So let's finish up with that, because you're a world expert on this, and then let's get into Comey and this big domino.
Yeah, so little things, we saw some of this stuff, right? The escalators that Trump was on at the UN, the shutting down of his teleprompter. There's small indicators of things that occur, and if you're really looking at the bigger, broader picture and the capabilities that do exist, you have to say, okay, what is happening? What are the things that are being tested? And it's not just to test, to see if they can do it. It's to see what is our response to it, right? It's what is our response to it. What's the response if they send another fishing vessel off the coast of Venezuela, with known drugs? There's bales and bales of drugs that they can send in these.
These are probes ahead of a major attack.
Right. Whenever you do a reconnaissance, a very active reconnaissance on the battlefield, and it's happening strategically, you are probing to see what the response systems are. What is the decision-making structure to be able to make a decision at the highest levels of our government? In this case, the President of the United States, Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, Secretary of State, the various entities within our national security structure. The President of the United States ought to be, he ought to have his national security team in right now and going through this. We call it war gaming in the military: action, reaction, counteraction. And when these things happen, so he ought to be looking at the options and the events that have occurred. And when you talk about somebody like a Comey, he's dog whistling on his video, okay? On his video that he put out last night. The guy is beyond arrogant, but he's also messaging. The messaging within the deep state is very, very real. I mean, Comey knows. He knows not to. He's just been indicted, right? He's going to. The likelihood of him being convicted is very high. But why would a guy like that, who's been at the top of the justice system, right, and served there, and been at the top of our government and served there, clearly, at the presidential level. I mean, why would a guy like that put out a message like he put out, as though like I'm innocent? I mean, you just don't do that for no reason. There is a clear and unadulterated reason why he is whistling to the entities that exist inside the deep state. Maybe he's basically whistling that we're going to stand and fight. He's got a deep state lawyer and law firm. Comey will go into this waging of this battle for him, and it'll be waged by many others in the deep state with unlimited resources, more resources than most nation states have. So what we have to understand is that the next couple of days here, right? I just listened to Trump a few minutes ago before coming on your show, Alex, about, I guess he was getting ready to get on a helicopter. He's going somewhere, and he said, more to come. Without him, we nobody would have known about the deep state. He's caught them all, and now we'll see what happens. The speed of war matters right now, okay? And we are in a war. We are in a war against the deep state. We are in a war against elements within our own government that are undermining every single aspect of what Donald J. Trump is trying to do. Pete Hegseth he's called in, 800, right? I mean, he's got a bunch of guys and gals coming in, unprecedented in U.S. history, to bring them all in and to say, okay, we'll see what Pete has to say about that. But these are to basically get the word out, to everybody, to say, hey, look, we have to have our be on our toes here. I'm not going to stand for any more of the undermining, the usurpation of our constitutional processes, of our rule of law. Trump really needs to do a couple of things. Number one, he needs to get a briefing on all presidential findings. So Donald J. Trump, if you're listening to this, get a briefing immediately on all presidential findings dating back decades. Number two, get a Title 50 briefing in detail by Tulsi Gabbard. She is very capable of doing that, and she'll be able to bring the right people to you. And then and in that meeting, in that briefing, have the Department of Justice, have the Attorney General in there, have the Director of the FBI in there, have your Secretary of State in there, have your Secretary of Defense in that meeting, so they can hear what you're about to be presented, because what you're about to be presented are authorities that only you, as the President of the United States, has. Okay? We have 3 equal branches of government. I got it. But there's only one President of the United States. And that president is the only person who reads the oath of office with one particular word, and that's called preserve. Preserve the Constitution of the United States of America, as well as protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And right now we have a massive amount of domestic enemies. The reason why I said months ago, Alex, is that Comey is going to be number one, because it is very clear. It's very clear what Comey did. Publicly, he did it, and he got away with it until now, right? So now the question is, what will Comey do? How will Comey act? I will tell you, they should have done a Roger Stone on Comey instead of allowing him to just turn himself in, and what is turning himself in?
Yes, they should have raided him and gotten all the material. And let me just back up for a moment. General, what you're saying is beyond important. Probably the most important thing ever said in the 30+ years of my broadcast, and I don't just say that lightly. You understand nation states, you understand regime change. That's what you obviously headed up. So, and you understand the factions still in the CIA, and we were talking during the break, that's the main culprit we got to watch here, obviously working with foreign states as cutouts. You're saying we have to be on an alert war footing. They've got to get, as is happening, the generals and all the top people in and say, this isn't a game, fire everything up, and also be in a posture to the bad guys we know, so that more of them understand their back's broken. That is so much of war is demoralizing the enemy. We are winning, and to let the enemy know their minions come in out of the dark, come in, to us. And I know that's happening behind the scenes on so many levels. And so they have the chief of staff coming in and blowing the whistle on the auto pin. The rats are leaving the sinking ship, but this is when the really bad guys up top will pull out all the stops. So we're in a war. and the president must preserve it. And you're talking about emergency powers. This is an outside coup operation, totally criminal. It's documented, and so we know what George Washington or Abraham Lincoln would do. And I think it's time to talk about that. That's where you're going. Please continue.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of operation centers throughout the U.S. government, but there's two primary operation centers. There's one in the Pentagon. It's the National Military Command Center, the NMCC, downstairs in the bowels of the Pentagon. I used to run the intelligence component of it. And then there's the one over in the CIA. The CIA has a very robust operations center. You can see and do anything you want from there, certainly globally. And you can understand what's happening if you had a CIA that was actually working on your behalf. There are other places where, like the National Counterterrorism Center has an ops center. There's really not one inside of the White House. But what I think right now, what President Trump requires is he requires an operations center that's working on his behalf and responding to every single thing that is happening around the world. I just listed a bunch of things here prior to coming on, and I just wrote them down. I'll just rattle them off: Ukraine, Middle East, Venezuela. We still have to deport 10 to 20 million criminals that are in this country. We have an education system that is still so broken, and we're already into a school year. I'm still fighting at the local level, school boards. Never mind, the Department of Education that Trump talked about shutting down. We just learned 300 FBI were at the Capitol on J6. We have whistleblower cases that are unveiling and unraveling all kinds of stuff about this coup that's going on. We have an organization that I just learned about. It was created in 2004. It's called UNITAID, UNITAID. And I can dig into that more, but it's essentially a USAID overseas, so they can launder our taxpayer dollars over there, right, and use them for whatever they want to use them for, like to usurp our elections. We have the Department of Defense. We just mentioned what Pete Hegseth is up to and what he's doing, and we'll see what ends up happening and what comes out of that. My guess is he's going to be reading them the Riot Act about getting control of some of the organizations, but also taking a hard look at some necessary reforms that do take a lot of time. But in the meantime, we have got to be ready for war, right? You got China breathing down our necks, and they're not just breathing down our necks in the Pacific or the Asia-Pacific basin or in the Panama Canal. They're breathing down our necks right here in our own hemisphere and right here in the United States of America. And then the last thing, which is really the most important threat that I feel that we face, and that's a Marxist socialist element inside of the United States government. And I call it an unholy alliance. One of the things that the president has to do right now is he's got to communicate. And he's the best communicator, that we've ever had, right? I mean, but he's got to communicate more, and he's got to communicate very clearly. I listened to his speech the other day at the UN, which, I'm adamant about. We got to get the UN out of here. But Trump is a great communicator. But now he has to communicate to the United States of America, to the people of this country, and frankly, the rest of the world that are still begging and hoping and pleading that the United States doesn't collapse under its own corrupt weight here. But he's got to communicate, almost like a State of the Union address or something. It doesn't have to be with Congress. He can do it from the Oval Office. But communicate the things that are happening and what his administration is doing, without signaling, without giving away the farm to the adversaries that are trying to figure out what is Trump going to do. But we cannot keep having the president of the United States, in front of a couple of cameras, a bunch of cameras in front of the White House, in front of the fake news, and saying, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. The American people now deserve to know, what are the steps? What are the stages of the things that are going to happen? If there's going to be more indictments, then just say there's going to be more indictments, and they're going to be in the next couple of days. Either you have the evidence or not. That's one element. What is it what did we learn about Charlie Kirk, right? I don't believe what the evidence has been presented to us has said. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. And the other thing about dates, because you just had that date up on the screen there. Dates matter to these people, okay? They matter quite a bit. So again, they're on the warpath. They being this radicalized Marxist element, these elements inside of our government that are led by, frankly, the Chinese are right at the top of that heap. And they're moving like, and let's go back to the metaphor of World War II. I mean, the Nazis and the Germans, they were very methodical. They were very organized. They were very smart about how they moved. When we attacked on that beach day ahead, it was like scrambling, right? Get the paratroopers out there, get the infantrymen. We didn't know which side was happening. Just keep pushing and keep pushing. So that's my message to the American people. We have got to keep pushing. We've got to keep pushing our leaders at the local level.
If you enjoyed today's video on Anonymous Official, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching and sticking with us.